All right, everybody. And by everybody, I mean probably just the people in this
Th-
call.
This group.
This group, plus Huff. Apparently, Huff might be watching these, so welcome in, Huff. Congrats on the Final Four. We also have Fleming in here and Ryan. Say what's up.
What's up?
Fleming, you shy? Well, Fleming's here. He'll speak
Did
up.
we lose him again?
Maybe we
Okay.
lost him.
I'm
Oh,
sorry, you guys cut out. I'm here.
there he is. Fleming's here. We're all here. Final Four. Me, Ryan, Fleming, Huff. 3 of us on the call. Let's just get into it. Ryan's got a time crunch, and a special edition this week is a little season in review for the 4 of us who have made it to the Final Four, and kind of a story of the journey of how we each got here. But first off, gotta give our props to James. Got 5th place. He had a good season. One quick callback to he won't have his an in-depth review, but my one takeaway I remember for him is my draft analysis of his team was he had a very high risk, high reward draft with guys like Derrick Henry, who Derrick Henry hit big on Derrick Henry. Jordan Love was kind of a boom bust pick. A couple others as well. The Chargers running back, J.K. Dobbins, that was a great kind of boom bust pick that worked out for him. So a lot of picks like that got him this far, I think. But ultimately, he gets 5th place.
You know, it's funny, real quick on that, was the 2 running backs who I didn't really like this year because of their new teams and propensity for their new teams' quarterbacks to QB sneak for Saquon and Derrick Henry.
And
so
they're 1 and 2 right now.
It's a nice cold take right there. But
hey, I think a lot of people were on board with you. I think I had the same worries for both of those running backs.
Yeah,
but for Derrick Henry, I think I was a little more safe on Derrick Henry because we saw what Gus Edwards did. Gus Edwards had 13 touchdowns last year.
True.
Just
True.
Jalen Hurts really gets the tush pushes though. All right.
He could have. I think I saw. Hold on. Last thing. I think I saw something about Saquon being tackled at the 9 times this year, and Hurts got 8 of those 9 touchdowns.
Mm-hmm.
So,
yep.
Just imagine if that wasn't the case.
Yeah, and Saquon's RB1 even without those touchdowns that Jalen Hurts steals.
Yeah.
So imagine.
Yeah.
Be crazy. Yeah. He'd probably be about to break all of LaDainian Tomlinson's records right now if he got all those.
Yeah.
But yeah, anyway, there really isn't much on top 25, bottom 25%. It's just me, again, at the top 25. I scored 191 last week. I guess I'll shout myself out. That's the 2nd highest score of all time. 2nd to Ben's 204, whatever it was. 208, I think, actually, last year, which might stand the test of time. Yeah, that's it for me. And bottom 25% is Ryan getting the
Give it to me.
Funnel that into his veins. 134 points, which is up 20% from last week of 112 because it's only one team. So the floor.
And I don't really. I think I saw something where it was 7 35-point scorers last week. Maybe that was PPR or something, but Charbonnet, Puka, Josh Allen, whoever others.
Jamar.
And I think it was Jamar. Yeah, and I think I was well, I survived without any of those. I think Huff might have not had any of those either, but obviously tough to survive when other teams are getting multiple 35 plus in some cases. So
yeah.
Anyway, I'll take my trash can.
Yeah, I agree. It was a high scoring week last week across the board. A quick look at the Box and Whisker. 2 weeks in a row I've now been an outlier, which that feels good to be so good that I'm not even considered part of the group. But Fleming has come in back-to-back 2nd places, so he's been showing to be consistent late in the season right now. That he could make that push for the championship, and by far our highest losing score. Actually, I think ever. I think it might be outside of actually no. This might even be higher than the losing score of last year's championship. It's going to be close to it. We'll have to see. Last year's championship, but anyway, Ryan and Huff with a close race for the trash can down there. All right, we are recording this after Thursday. Thursday was a very disappointing game that, if you all are aware what happened, no one scored a touchdown. You're only happy if you had Puka. You're pretty upset if you had just about anyone else. Kyron, I guess, was serviceable. Kittle Kittle was not great either. So
I didn't start him. Good call, Ryan.
Good call. Well, you do have the I think you have the auto sub thing on him, so you might, in case of injury.
I think Trey is playing, but yeah. Hypothetically, correct.
But a fun time of the year to have a Monday night doubleheader. And they seem to just appear at random times. I wasn't aware at the beginning of the season how often this was going to happen. But a lot of guys to be played. A lot will come down to this Monday night. It will probably be a very electric finish, I would hope. I have Justin Jefferson and Brock Bowers. Huff has Aaron Jones, Vikings defense, and that's it. And Fleming, you have Bijan, right?
I have Bijan, yeah.
You have Bijan, Jacoby Myers on the bench, and Ryan, you have Drake London.
He will not be black.
Okay, so Ryan will be done on Sunday. That'll be fun. So hopefully you're feeling good after Sunday, Ryan, because we will all have people to go going into Monday.
Well, I'm planning to be ahead of Ryan after he's done, and then I can bench Bijan and get back my top waiver priority.
I mean, you are nowhere near ever passing me or Huff on the season for points, so I think you're good in that category if Ryan's out of the picture. Which I think leads us to right here.
Yeah, and Eric, hopefully after Thursday night, you won't be sweating Justin Jefferson on it either. So
yeah, I don't want to have to be sweating it because Justin Jefferson plays the Bears, who gave him his worst performance in the season a couple weeks ago.
I think the Bears quit, honestly.
You think they quit on the season?
Yeah, look at what the 49ers did, who evidently didn't score a touchdown against a team that just gave up 50 points.
It's crazy.
So anyway, I think I wouldn't be sweating Jefferson if you need him, but.
But I got Bowers. I got confidence in Bowers always, who will also be on Monday night. Ryan, Fleming both coming in on the season, only averaging 102, 103 a week when we've just seen teams score 120 and 115 and get eliminated the last 2 weeks. So it's a funny place to be. But they are alive. They've done their benching players. And that's really it.
Care.
I'm up to 130. I think this is higher than either JC or Jack's average of last season. I'll have to go back and compare that. At the end of the season, I'm going to do a whole 2 seasons rewards ceremony where I'll look into this stuff more specifically. But Huff more around the middle of the pack. James getting eliminated with the second most points scored on the year. Ryan and Fleming finally passed Johnny 2 weeks later. 3 weeks later. No, 2 weeks. 2 weeks later. Yeah, that's all there is to say there. Economy, not much to say. I have $5. Everyone has $0. I can control anyone who's on waivers that happens to be good from people's benches getting eliminated. As we know, the starters are not getting dropped anymore when a team is eliminated. So yeah, that is it. $5 left in circulation. All right, Grim Reapers. I am still waiting for someone actually notable to join the 3 category. But joining the 2 category from James's team are CeeDee Lamb and Aaron Jones, who are rostered. These are all the 2s that are rostered. And where they sit, Ryan has none of them, which is kind of notable. Fleming has Bijan and CeeDee Lamb. I have Joe Mixon, Nico Collins, and Huff has 3 with Jaden Daniels, Jahmyr Gibbs, and Aaron Jones all starting this week. So some of these guys, unless Ryan gets eliminated, are bound to go up to 3. But still pretty uninteresting here on the Grim Reaper side. All right, my Week 14 reaction. There really isn't much to say. We're in the Final Four. How can you set yourself apart to make it to the championship? Realistically, is there a team that can contend with mine in the championship if I theoretically make it there? I know I'm jumping ahead. I think the best chance people have is if I get eliminated in a kind of surprising fashion in these next 2 weeks before the championship. But it's totally possible. There will be high scorers, obviously, that aren't on my team, so it's just finding those guys to outplay me when we get there. And especially with smaller waivers going forward, it's hard for these other 3 teams with 0 fab and less players in the pool to improve from where they're at right now. And I own the market anyway, so I can, in theory, I'd have really good people on my bench, so I'd have to drop a good player to get a good player, but the remaining 3 teams will have to make incredibly savvy moves to win the championship this year, is the way I look at it. What do you guys think?
Yeah, I mean, I think it would be an upset for sure. And I think Jamar is like 1A, and there's a big drop to like the next,
All the other receivers.
like the next best wide receiver. So I mean, I think that's a huge advantage. But I mean, I think, and I'm not advocating for my team. I very well could be out this week, but I think the world I've positioned myself in is like just give me volume, guys. You know, and so if Kyron is going to continue to get 30 carries a game, like he, you know, that is a recipe for, he could go off. You know, and it's fantasy. It's random. You know, like if guys are getting 30 carries, like look out. You know, so there's guys out there that could pop off, and maybe there's a perfect storm. But yeah, it'd be an upset. I mean, Puka could go for 40 again.
Mm-hmm.
He seems
Josh Allen.
Like, yeah. I mean, I think it. It would take a perfect storm, but there's guys out there who are capable of single-handedly winning a matchup if Jamar goes for 15 and Jay goes for 15, which is a fine game, but like he doesn't get in the end zone and maybe even problem.
Yeah, it can happen. We've seen my team bust. Go ahead, Fleming.
Yeah, I mean, go
ahead. Your bust though is a much higher score than anyone else's bust, so I feel like for you, what it might have to be is like you need like a Justin Jefferson Bears performance to have a few players, but also, I mean, Ryan, you texted last week. You're like, do you ever wish, jokingly of course, do you ever wish your players would get injured? And no, we never want that to happen. But I feel like for Eric, that might have to happen where a player gets injured very early, or like Puka for me got suspended in like the first quarter of one game for punching a guy. So like I think that will have to happen too, or you'd need like 2 Josh Allens to go for 50 and you just have a standard day.
I agree. And that can happen. It's not completely out of the question.
It's funny. I think I'm fine surviving another week because of an injury. I would hate to like win the whole thing because like it genuinely, this isn't just me. Like if Jamar tweaked his ankle in the first quarter and had 0 and I won by like 5 points, that would feel a little funky. I don't know if I would like that. I mean, I would take it obviously, but that would be a weird way to win. I don't know if I'd feel great about that. But,
I mean, yeah, injuries will be very season changing at this point. One injury could be all it takes. I mean, last week, I want to say the worst score of anyone's starting lineup was probably T. Higgins on James's team, and he got eliminated. So you can't have a dud scorer.
I'll go out on a limb and say Huff will beat that this week.
Huff will have a lower score than 3.5 on his team.
He has one right now. He has.
Forgot about that. That is funny. I didn't end up doing like the whole quadrant thing at the end of this, but I'm still going to show the 3 graphs just because there really isn't much to distinguish people at this point. But this does show Fleming is, notably better on the analytics side than Ryan and Huff this week for both Sleeper and Fantasy Pros. And when we look at rest of season, he's also looking there's even a wider margin now for Fleming compared to them two rest of season. That's probably due to Josh Allen and Puka's going off right now. So Huff and Ryan kind of a close race for last, and then looking at position strength, relative position strength, Huff starts to run away from Ryan a little bit here, but it's all very razor thin margins at this point. So there's nothing really else to say. And now we are getting into the breakdowns of each team seasons. I'm going to start with each team's draft and then get into their analysis. And I think, Ryan, I'll do yours second. I'll do mine first, which is how I had it, but it looks like we should have time to get to yours second before you have to hop off. But okay, let's get into it. This was my draft, and I give myself my now way after draft grade on my slide, but ultimately I nailed my 1 and 2. They're still my starters. And I think that's all you can hope for in your first and second round pick. Neither of these were I guess you could call them home runs, but they were just good. They were just solid first and second round pick. After that I had some, Pittman is a very questionable one, but then I nailed some again with Godwin and Chase Brown later in the draft. and nothing really that significant after that. Jonathan Brooks was very useless, not worth the draft pick at all.
Rashad Bateman.
Yeah, I think I dropped him before week 1. I think I dropped him to pick up Mr. You can't wait. There it is, Jordan Mason, who you dropped right after the draft.
Yep.
So that was that's one thing I mentioned on both the team slides. But ultimately, I'll start up here on the top right. I'm going to give myself an A on my draft. A lot of reasons. I think I probably had one of the best drafts in retrospect, given my first and second round pick, and then nailing Godwin later. But I think the story of my season, weeks 1 through 5, I really just rotated veteran quarterbacks and very mid tight ends to get by, because I had good running backs and receivers. So Stafford, Dalton, Geno Smith, Flacco were my starters in that span, and all of them, when I started each of these 3 once, and they all went off the 1 week I started them. So I kind of nailed when to start them. And week 6 is when I really started to make my team better. It's when I made the big purchase on Kenneth Walker for 46, which is obviously in retrospect an overpay, but he was kind of hot at the time, so I went and got him. But the big things were getting Purdy and Kate Otten both for 0. I rode Purdy for like 5 weeks, and he was really good in that stretch in the midseason, and Kate Otten was also insane when everyone else in the Bucs got hurt. So Otten really, those 2 guys were huge parts of my team midseason. And then week 8 is when I landed Saquon for 38, which is one of the best things I did on the season. And then moving on to week 10, that's when I made the big splashes for Jamar and Jonathan Taylor, and I outbid Johnny for those guys. If Johnny could have gotten these guys, especially Jamar, I think Johnny, he mentioned he regretted not going bigger on Jamar at the time. He could have easily outbid me for Jamar, but he didn't. And then weeks 13 and 14 is when I scavenged off of Johnny's team, Joe Mixon, Nico Collins, Brock Bowers, and then I grabbed Derrick Henry this last week for $1, and that really rounded out my final elite squad that I have right now going into the Final Four. So yeah, just kind of my bulleted season review. I drafted well, like I said. I didn't make any knee-jerk moves throughout the season. Maybe Kenneth Walker was an overpay, but I still wouldn't call that like a knee-jerk move. I was never in a position Monday night where I was going to get eliminated and needed to like drop all my money on someone to survive. So I kind of just stayed level-headed, I feel like. And I constantly hit on players at their peaks, like these quarterbacks, like Purdy and Otten mid-season. I think I made a couple good savvy money moves that I don't really list here, but I traded away some pretty mid players for like little bits of fab here and there at good times. And then at the end, I kind of just got lucky with high fab eliminations, with like Mark getting eliminated, Johnny getting eliminated, and then these last couple weeks, like James getting eliminated. He was the only other person with fab, which opened the door for me to get anyone I wanted this last week. So there was a little bit of luck involved, but there's always going to be luck involved in a Guillotine League. And now I'm the favorite to win the championship. So that's my season. I think my best moves on the year was one I really wanted to shout out was trading Pittman for Mooney straight up in week 4 to Mark. Mooney was great for me mid-season as well. I got Otten for $0. That was one of my favorites. And then securing Saquon mid-season in week 8. I think those were my 3 most notable big things that I did. And my worst moves, probably drafting Jonathan Brooks. He was completely useless, although I didn't have to spend that much draft capital on him. Trading away Chase Brown for $5 in week 3 was pretty stupid. If I could have held on to him to this point, he'd be great, but not that I'm not okay with where I am now. And I overspent on Kenneth Walker pretty significantly week 6, but can't say it wasn't completely unworth it. And the fact that I still have the most fab now is hard to say I overspent ever, because I still have the most fab. And my MVPs, I'm going to give it to Saquon, Justin Jefferson, and Josh Jacobs. The blue label means that you drafted them going forward, just to keep that in mind. My first and second round picks, I'm going to have to give them my MVPs. I started them the entire seasons, and they got me here. So that is my season in review. You guys have anything to say before we get on the Ryans?
What stuck out to me is Jamar Chase for 15. If Johnny had outbid you, there was that week where Jamar went off for 49. You would have been eliminated had just a standard week. So that was a huge play for you.
Yeah, or if Johnny, either of Jamar didn't go off for 50, or if Johnny outbid me, one or the other, I'd be gone. So that was a huge one, probably worth mentioning. So good call out.
I bet Johnny starts him over Quentin Johnson.
I'm sure he does. Oh boy. All right, I'm gonna jump way to here. We are with Ryan's. His draft real quick. Ryan, so really, I think this draft was terrible. Kyron Williams.
It is pretty terrible.
Tyron Williams is the only notable guy here, only guy that's still on your team, and the only guy that was still on your team after like maybe say 6 weeks. Stroud
I would
actually
say
lasted
Josh
a little
Downs.
longer.
Josh
Yeah.
Downs was a good pick.
And then
So,
Josh Downs
other
is
than that,
your one redeeming like middle round pick. Same with Fryermuth was all right for where you got him.
yeah.
But yeah, ultimately I'm gonna give you a D. I would give you an F, but I'll say the Josh Downs and Fryermuth saved it. And hitting on your first round pick is very important. You could hit some good ones later, but if you miss on your first and second, like multiple early picks, you're done. I would say preseason to week 1, I would say there were some questionable decisions being made. First off, starting with drafting Debo in the second and dropping Jordan Mason before the season started. And then I think you overspent a bit on Garrett Wilson, but you did redeem that by trading him away later. Weeks 2 to 4 is when you kind of start to heat up and upgrade. You flip Bijan for a net plus 22 by buying him off waivers and then selling him to Phillip. You got Montgomery and Zay Flowers for Kyron and Elijah Moore, not DJ Moore. That's the other Moore. Juwan Jennings for $0, who can win off for you in week 3 for 41, and then you spent big on Breece Hall for 61. These were probably necessary upgrades given where you were to start the season, based off who you drafted. And then midseason, week 8 is when you kind of started to make the big waiver splash. You got Kupp for 28, who was good at the time. McMillan for 4, who didn't really pan out. And then Hopkins for 0. You snatched him up right when the news came out about what's his face being out for the season. So what's his name? The Chiefs receiver.
Hollywood, maybe.
No. The guy who
Rashee?
Mahomes. Yeah, Rashee Rice. And then you snatched up Hopkins for 0, which was good. And then week 11, kind of quiet from 9 to 10. And then week 11, you went on a big trading frenzy. You got $18 for Kupp. You got Mike Evans for Debo in 2. And you got Travis Kelce for Pacheco in 4, which was a great trade because Pacheco hasn't really panned out to anything. And then weeks 12 to 14, actually I think that was Fleming here on the other side of this. And then weeks 12 to 14, You do a bunch of other trades. I would say your biggest moves at the end of the season were trades and not waiver acquisitions, and that was getting Chase Brown for Kareem Hunt. That was also a Fleming trade. Getting Lamar for Herbert in 5. That was a desperation move, but ultimately it wasn't. Like, you didn't overpay at all, I would say, to get Lamar. That was with me. And you got Kittle in London for Kelce and Kupp, which I think is potentially an upgrade at both positions, but probably a downgrade at tight end, but definitely an upgrade at receiver, especially seeing Kupp go for 0 this week. So yeah, my bulleted points for you on your season. I said your draft was terrible. I don't think you did great preseason in week 1, but then you started to pick it back up. Rocky start from questionable early management, I would say, but then you start to heat up in weeks 3 and 4, really 2 to 4, when you start grabbing these guys and doing these trades. And you were one of the most active traders in the league, and it was very impossible to try to assess your good and bad moves because you did so many. There were so many guys, like Kupp, you like had him and lost him like 3 different times, or had him and gave him away, or multiple different times throughout the season. But I would say ultimately, and you can argue with these, I think your best moves were Juwan Jennings for $0, goes for 41 in week 3. Got to mention it. I also got him on your MVP just solely for that. I think you would have been dead in week 3 if you didn't have him. So got to give him a shout out. And also, you didn't have that many consistent pieces in your lineup. You kept moving guys around, so it also was hard to find MVPs for that reason. Trades Pacheco for Kelce in week 11. I think that was a really good move. And then you did the 1-for-1 trade, Chase Brown for Hunt. I think that was really good for you as well in week 12. Worst moves, I would say, as I already mentioned, dropping Jordan Mason after the draft before we knew about CMC. But if you held on to him, Jordan Mason would have been a really good piece early season, really the first half of the season. And then you did blow $10 on a trade for Pacheco in week 5, although you redeemed that, getting Kelce back for him. And then you also traded $13 to get Kupp and Brian Robinson, which I think $13 doesn't sound like a lot, but in week 12 that was a lot. But however, you did end up trading Kupp back away anyway. So very hard to track your team. But that's what do you think, Ryan? How did I do here? Ryan's at the airport, so he may be. Fleming, you still there?
Yeah, I think it's funny seeing how much these trades did involve me. Looking back, it's just kind of funny. But I think I had the feeling of Ryan's team. I joked with him early in the season. I've never really cared for who he picks. I don't know. He and I typically, whenever we do drafts, we're in multiple leagues together. Just never really care for the guys on his team. But then this year, for whatever reason, we always traded. And maybe that's just because we're text a lot and all that. But I don't know. I just felt like this whole year he was just one of those teams. I'm like, I don't love it, but gonna figure out a way to get it done. And he obviously did that, making all those moves.
Yeah, I agree. That probably would be a good like fifth bullet here. Is he just kind of figured it out throughout the season? He was making a lot of moves, and there wasn't a lot of consistency on his team, but he found a way to get by each week, and now here he is, and he's got a pretty solid squad going into the championship, or not championship, Final Four. Ryan, you back? Oh, Ryan said, was he sitting there? He just said,
I was just sitting there as my plane was almost done boarding. Not sure what that means.
Oh, so I think he had to run. I think he had like a run to get on the plane. Did he drop off the Discord? Yeah, he did drop off. Okay. Well, I'm sure he'll respond in the chat after we post the video. I'm sure he heard at least most of this or part of this, but we will back it up. Just go back to in order. So, yeah, after my season review, I'm still going to give my weekly slide for this week and a little bit of hit on last week. Jamar and Charbonnet were my huge MVPs from last week. The Seahawks have been weird, and Ryan and I were talking about this. That I've had Kenneth Walker. He averages like 55-60% of the snaps because Charbonnet gets so much work in every week. It's almost like a 1A, 1B, but it's a very clear Kenneth Walker first when he's in, but Charbonnet takes a lot of touchdowns from him, a lot of touches. I feel like one of them needs to be hurt for the other one to go crazy. But whenever one of them does get hurt, and it's just the other one, that person goes crazy. Charbonnet's always done well in his absence, so I'm glad I was quick to snatch him up after I heard Kenneth Walker was out. And Justin Jefferson also put up 29 for me. I spent just on Derrick Henry and Chuba this week, and I'm throwing in Charbonnet from late last week. I still have $5. In the Final Four, my hard matchup of the week, I have Justin Jefferson versus Chicago, given what we already said about his bad matchup or bad performance last time they played. But I will say I now have a 5th star, which I think takes the record from last year from JC. Once again, I'll bring that up when I do my rewards ceremony. But unlike JC, who was the dominant team last year, I have 0 negative accolades. JC, I did have 1 trash can and 1 or 2 ice cubes to go along with all his positive ones, but I feel like I'm having a historically great season that will be hard to repeat.
Your end of season award will be most improved.
Most improved from last year, getting 12th, 13th place last year. But hey,
well, I kind of wanted that. I was like, I was thinking how I did this year compared to last year. I think I got 9th or 10th or whatever.
Yeah.
And I was I'm doing better. And I was like, nope, Eric's done a lot better than I am.
Hey, you've still improved. If you made it to the Final Four, it's no easy feat to get here. So
I certainly improved. I just don't think I got most improved. So
yeah,
I'll be looking in on that.
Maybe I'll include a slide like that at the for my end of season awards. Is those classic, most improved or whatever.
Almost most.
What was that?
Or almost most improved. Could have been most improved.
Second most improved. Because Ryan was in the Final Four last year, and Huff was an early season Elim last year too.
Oh, was he? Okay.
Yeah, and I will say he kind of kept a similar strategy both years, where he's very quiet. He doesn't do a lot of trades, doesn't make big acquisitions until later. Last year it did not work. This year it did. All right, let's get into Fleming's team, starting with his draft. I remember knocking the Josh Allen in the first round. It's really hard to argue with it now. I mean, any guy that can put up 30-plus multiple weeks throughout the season and even put up a 50-plus week is probably worth a first-round pick, so I was wrong on that. Mike Evans has been solid outside of injury. And past that, the only other pick I really liked was McLaurin. You definitely kind of went the 0 RB strategy, so to speak. So Jalen Warren and Tyjae Spears were very below average but semi-serviceable guys to start weeks 1 and 2, which is what you did, and you didn't get eliminated, so that's all that matters. But yeah.
I expected Tony Pollard, since he was going to a new team, I didn't think that he would pan out super well.
Yep.
And also he had kind of an average year at Dallas the year prior. So I didn't have huge hopes for him, and since Tyjae was younger and they drafted him, I was like, oh, maybe this is a homegrown guy. I thought that maybe after a few weeks they would look more to him to be their number 1, and I was wrong on that.
Yeah. I mean, and actually, I'm looking at the bottom of your draft here. Although you probably didn't hold on to them for very long. These are like Justice Hill, Alexander Madison, Demarcus Robinson were pretty solid late picks.
Yeah.
Given how thin it is at that point, you look at other names around here. Not a lot of good names. So, yeah, give you a little shout out on that one. I'm ultimately giving you a draft grade of a C. Outside of the Josh Allen, Mike Evans, Terry McLaurin, I think there were a couple whiffs there. I mean, we just mentioned Tyjae Spears didn't pan out exactly how we thought. Your weeks 1 to 2, you kind of struggled early at running back with Jalen Warren, Tyjae Spears, and Alexander Madison all in the mix in your starting lineup. But you made it through, and then week 3 is when you started to find those serviceable upgrades, mostly at running back with Brian Robinson, who you bid $36 for, Zach Moss, who you got $16 in a trade with Ryan, and Kelsey, who you bid on waivers for $15, which is kind of crazy how cheap he went for. But we all probably remember how unimpressive he was early in the season. So $15, I'd say, was a pretty solid bid for him at the time. Got him on a low.
He didn't have a touchdown till like week 8 or something like that, or it was pretty late. And I remember thinking like he's too good. He'll figure it out. Like he will. Like he's too good. So that's why I went for him.
Yeah, it was a good move. I think at the time I was like, oh man, overspent. But ultimately, I wouldn't say you overspent at all. And then weeks 4 to 6, that's when you do the trade away of Josh Allen to get 55 fab and Darnold, that was to David, who was desperate on Monday night and got eliminated anyway. You wavered Stephon Diggs for 29 and Rashid Shaheed for 9. We'll jump quickly to the worst moves. I have that as one of your worst moves because he was injured. We didn't know how badly yet, I think, at the time. And then like after you got him, he was ruled out for the rest of the season. So you got nothing out of him. But $9 isn't the worst amount to lose. And then week 11, kind of a big gap between 7 and 10. Not much happened on your team from what I could recall. Nothing super notable. But week 11 is when you go on a big trading frenzy and also get Josh Allen back on waivers. You get James Cook and $6 for Amon-Ra. You got Debo and $2 for Mike Evans and Pacheco and $4 for Travis Kelce. So while those bottom two, I would definitely think you got the worst end of it, but at the positive side is that you got fab, and you did end up using that fab, as we'll see on this next little bit, that you spent it well. And I'd say the James Cook and 6 for Amon-Ra is not a terrible trade. I like it more than these two at least. And then weeks 12 to 14 is when you didn't know like major spending, but you quietly built a pretty strong squad here to go into the Final Four. Bijan for 8, Amon-Ra for 1, and then Jonnu Smith for 0, and Jonathan Taylor this week for 0. So pretty solid guys for pretty low fab. And then bulleted version. I think your draft was semi-underwhelming, and you struggled early at running back. But mid-season, you remained kind of quiet, middle of the pack team. You weren't ever a super top scorer. You had a couple bottom 25%, but generally you were around the middle of the pack. Flipping Josh Allen for 55 was pretty good for the fab, considering you also got him back later in the season. And you, like Ryan, often pulled starters to improve your waiver order, which I forgot to put that bullet on Ryan's slide, but we all know he does it. I say it every week. And now you're here in the Final Four, and you think you've assembled a pretty formidable squad for the late season. Best move?
Yeah.
Say something. Jump in.
I looking back at the right side of this page, it's funny because I'm like, oh man, I had a rough stretch. I think I felt a little bit better now that I'm looking back at it. I'm like, oh, I didn't do so hot. So it's amazing I got here. But one thing that's like so interesting about this is like Bijan goes for 75 and Josh Allen for 55 and Kenneth Walker for 45 and all that. And then now we're looking at, like, you look at the bottom screen, Amon-Ra for $1 because I traded Terry and I think 30 or 40 for Amon-Ra, and then I traded back to Johnny, and then I got him for $1. So it's just like, it's so interesting how the money changes throughout the season. And it's just like looking at the draft, I looked at it, I saw I drafted 2 defenses, and I don't even have those defenses anymore. You never keep a defense the whole year. So I'm like, why did I get so caught up on that? So there's just little things that I think we get caught up on so early in the year. But if you figure out a way just to survive, just to get to like week 10, 11, 12, then after that, you can kind of ride hopefully to the end with the fab to then really build what you want. But I don't know I don't think I would be in this position had I done that. I think I would have been eliminated earlier. but it's depends on, I guess, how you draft and how injuries go and how stats go. But this is interesting.
Yeah, I think the whole fab argument is there's so many ways to use fab throughout the season and how to use it. Because if you spend big on someone and then that person either gets hurt or just doesn't pan out, it's a big blow. Because fab becomes so valuable late in the season, you can get guys for almost nothing. It does depend on how the entire economy goes throughout the season, like if big fab teams get eliminated or not. This year we saw a lot of that. So it's going to change every year what fab is like mid-season, late season. But what we probably learned from this season is that you need to be probably smarter. Not you specifically. Everyone needs to be smart with how they spend their fab mid-season on guys that you might not start late season. Like how much is it worth spending on guys that you're not going to start late season?
Yeah. Well, and I think you said every year's different for fab. I mean, Jack set the bar by buying Saquon for however much and then after that, I remember because I traded with Johnny after that trade happened, and Johnny's like, well, if Saquon went for this, then I want more. Whereas I think had Saquon's trade not happened, I think the starting price would have been lower based on last year. So that's a factor. That first trade's
that is
a big
a good
one.
point. That set the tone for the price of players early on. But yeah, I'm going to give you your best moves as drafting Josh Allen. I will once again say I was wrong on that. That was a good pick. This is probably your best move on the season was trading Demarcus Robinson. I guess I should have included this in your over here as well. But you traded Demarcus Robinson and Dalton Schultz for Puka, who was hurt in week 2, and that ended up being a great move. That was with Matt, and he wanted Demarcus Robinson because at the time we thought Demarcus Robinson was going to step up in the injury of in place of Puka and Kupp both hurt. He did not. And Schultz has been a bum all year, so that was a great trade, even though you had to wait to reap the rewards of Puka. And then getting Jonnu Smith last week for $0. He was great last week. He might even be an endgame player. We'll see. But I'd say your worst moves are, as we already mentioned, the $9 on an injured Shaheed, who you got nothing out of in week 2. Trading Kelsey for Pacheco in week 11 with Ryan, and then also doing a trade with Ryan, trading away Chase Brown for Kareem Hunt. I think you kind of had Hunt and Pacheco to like make sure you had both at the same time. So whoever was starting, you'd have them. Didn't love those moves, but you're still here. So
yeah, I agree on that on the first and the last one. I think Pacheco.
You still have him, don't you?
I still have him, and he hasn't gotten a touchdown. He hasn't gotten a touchdown, but he's gonna be. I think he could be a 15-point plus, and it's the Chiefs, and they find a way to win. So I don't know. I don't think that one was as bad, but we'll see what ends up. I don't even know if I'll play him this week. We'll see, but yeah, certainly Chase Brown for Kareem Hunt because in hindsight I didn't even need to make that trade. Looking back at it, I would have survived. That one was rough.
And it'd be nice to have Chase Brown still at this point. But,
yeah.
But hey, you got other guys. I got your MVPs as Josh Allen and Terry McLaurin, who you drafted, but also like lost them at one point and got them back, and then Puka.
I think at the point where I didn't have anyone on my team that I drafted. I think I traded them all away or dropped them.
I think you're right. I think you are right. But yeah, look at you this week. You've been second place back-to-back weeks. You're in a good spot, although, this doesn't really reflect it. Second place doesn't get you anything at this point in the season. But Josh Allen coming in big with a 52, Puka with 36. That'll get it done any week. If they do that in the championship, you're going to win. You get CeeDee Lamb, T. Higgins, and Jonathan Taylor for $0 this week. And you've made it to the Final Four. And I would have your tough matchup as James Cook at Detroit, especially after seeing the dud he put up last week, which really was just Josh Allen vulturing all his touchdowns. But Detroit has been good against running backs. So,
yeah, I think that may not last. I may do Pacheco over him.
Ooh.
I'm not sure yet, though.
TBD.
I don't know. I'm kind of curious about CeeDee Lamb. Because he could be especially because now that Puka got 14 and like Up started out slow and Ryan kind of started slow, I may slot in CD if he's healthy. I don't know. I'm gonna wait till Sunday. I think
over who?
Oh, maybe over Cook.
I gotcha. Okay, you got Amon-Ra. Yeah, Terry and Amon-Ra are probably locks. I mean, not that you couldn't make a decision to go someone else, but I like those guys. And yeah, those will be some tough choices looking at your team right now. But Jacoby Myers probably provides a good floor too.
Yeah, I don't think startable, especially if Spencer Rattler's playing.
Yeah, very true.
Or Riddler, whoever it is.
Riddler. Yeah, Desmond Ridder. Yeah. I mean, hey, I'm rolling with Bowers. I think Bowers is just, no matter who's the quarterback, they're getting him the ball, which is nice. I will say I probably got to go in about less than 10 minutes. So I'm going to really blow through Huffs here. He is very quiet throughout the season, to say the least. I would give him as one of the best drafts on the season. Actually, I'm just realizing now Jonnu Smith all the way down here. I'm sure he dropped him soon after. But some really good picks. You look through these first four, and they were all on his team and starters on his team for like half the season. So that's really good to nail all four of those. Deontay Johnson, unfortunate. I liked him as a pick, but it didn't go his way. Unfortunately, Charbonnet was great for him early in the season as a floor play flex. Shakir is great too. Like literally nails so many picks here. Quentin Johnson's all right. I mean, I don't hate. None of these picks are like absolute duds at all, except for Deontay Johnson, but that was kind of weird circumstances. So really good draft from Huff. I'm giving him also an A. Could have been an S tier if we're going in that tiering system, but he was really good in the draft. He was weeks 1 through 6. He was very successful on a budget. He quietly just kind of kept with the guys he drafted and got through. He only added Eckler for 3, Tucker Kraft for 2, and Braylon Allen for 1. Those were his literal only moves that spent money early on in the season. And then week 7 and 8 is when he first made his big upgrades on waivers with DK for 36, Tyreek Hill for 27, and Bucky Irving for 2. That was a great budget pickup. And then weeks 9 to 10, he continues to add more. So I think this clearly goes into Huff's philosophy, because it seems like this is probably what he was trying to do last year, but he got eliminated before he got to week 7 through 10 when he would start trying to grab those guys. I think he thinks it's not worth wasting fab early on mid players. So he'd rather wait until he has more fab than everyone and can get guys like DK, Tyreek, Alvin Kamara, Devontae Adams for like pretty reasonable numbers. So yeah, 9 to 10, as I just said. Kamara for 18, Devontae for 7, and wait. I must have forgotten to take that out. I pasted this in from your slide to then change it to his, but he did not get Shaheed for 9. Ignore that. Weeks 11 to 14 is he didn't make too many huge acquisitions, but he made some really good, smart QB plays with Bo Nix for 29 in week 11 and Sam Darnold for 35 in week 14 when Kyler was on bye. And then also in weeks 11 through 14 is when he makes his final acquisitions in his trade with Ryan, where he gets Kelsey and Kupp for Kittle and London. He gets Gibbs for $2, Devontae Adams for 0, and Aaron Jones for 0, assembling the endgame squad. So yeah, ultimately, very solid draft. Quiet throughout the midseason until week 7, and then he kind of sneakily dominated throughout the midseason stretch, and those smart QB moves late in the season got him through those weeks, and he also didn't make a trade until week 13, which was that Kittle London for Kelsey and Kupp trade with Ryan. Best moves, getting Bucky for $2 in week 8. Was great. Probably by far his best budget pickup. Kamara for 18. I mean, that's not like the flashiest thing ever, but I think that's a good pickup for the price in week 9. And then Kittle for $2 is a great deal, although he did trade him to Ryan subsequently. Worst moves, $36 on Metcalf was too much, but I'm sure he helped out in the meantime in the midseason, but that was an overpay. Trading away Kittle in London, I think Ryan by far got the better end of that, especially with Kupp putting up a dud this week, and then blowing $4 on Christian McCaffrey on one of those last waiver periods. Didn't work out for him at all because he ended up getting hurt. So kind of just unlucky, but still going to put it as one of his worst moves. And I'd say all 3 of his MVPs came from his draft. His 2nd, 3rd, and 4th round picks, Devon Achane, James Conner, and Kyler Murray, were constant staples of his starting lineup throughout the entire season to get him here. And they're still in his lineups, except for Kyler. So, good stuff from Huff. This week, I mean, Darnold, as I mentioned in his previous slide, was a great move last week. Good call from him as a guy to fill in. Now this week he adds in Jaden Daniels, Devontae Adams, and Aaron Jones. And we are in the Final Four. It's a tough match. Hey, look at that. I nailed it. Kupp at San Francisco is a tough matchup. 0 points. I get an A+ on that prediction. And I did. Yeah. I put that in before. I will say I made all these predictions before Thursday night started. But yeah, Huff's got all the accolades. Not really much else to say. and now we're back on Ryan's. We never got to Ryan's slide after his in-season in review, but ultimately Kyron and Chase Brown were his top scorers. And Kyler, I did knock the Kyler start, but Kyler did fine. Now he's got Lamar back from bye, and his team's looking pretty okay. And Ryan did say he might be benching London, but we will see. He acquired McBride, JSN, and Juwan Jennings. He already started Juwan, who didn't do great. JSN's been very quietly very good this season. He's a top 10 fantasy receiver, which is surprising to say. And McBride gets a ton of targets, so he's a good player. But I still have... Ryan doesn't have a lot of tough matchups this week, but I am going to pick McBride versus New England as his potential tough matchup of the week. Bang. Last look at James. Hurts was his top scorer, who he just acquired last week. That was a good acquisition. CeeDee Lamb and JSN did well for him as well, but that was about the end of it for his high-scoring players. Derrick Henry and Jonathan Taylor were on bye. That's a tough combination this late in the season, and the rest of his team couldn't step up in their absence. But $3, Fab, into the void, was the last player besides me with Fab, so set me up for success after that. And the power rankings. Fleming, congratulations. I've moved you up to 2. I think you are better than Ryan and Huff right now. And I have Ryan slightly below Huff still, but they're both moved down 1 from where they were last week. That's really it. There's not too much. It's pretty thin margins here. And prediction to get guillotined. Fleming, who do you have this week?
It's hard because after last night, either Ryan or Huff, I don't know. They have easy matchups, or they had a lot of green matchups, and I don't. So part of me is like, it's going to be me. So I don't know. I think if I had to go with it on gut, I guess got to go with Huff again. But I don't know. I don't know. I don't have a good hot take. It's not you. That's my hot take.
That's the only hot take if you predict me. Otherwise, it's to me, it is a pretty close race between. I think you're in a better spot, especially after Thursday, than Ryan and Huff. But I did make this prediction before Thursday, and I also have Huff. We are both going Huff back-to-back weeks. Nothing against you, Huff, if you're watching. It's just it's a 1 in 4 chance. I'm not going to predict myself, and I think the 0 from Cup. I did make this prediction before the 0 from Cup, but now the 0 from Cup really, really, really puts you in a tough spot. You got to have some big performances from your other guys, which he does have boom potential from guys. So I won't count him completely out.
I'm feeling better after last night because of Puka, but then in reality, I'm only projected 8 to 10 points more than Ryan and Huff, and it's that's a 50-yard touchdown catch from a receiver.
Yep.
And sudden it's tied up again. So it could be anybody that's not you.
Yeah, I mean, I still think this is the point where I now don't feel perfectly safe. Last week I still felt very confident, and this week is probably the first week I'm like, all right, it's not out of the question that my guys could just be a little underwhelming, and all you guys have guys that pop off, and that could be it for me. So I still have to make smart start decisions because I have really good guys on my bench. So deciding who to start is where I will make or break my season, I think.
Yeah.
Here, but if Kenneth Walker's out, I might still start Charbonnet, even though I have Saquon and Joe Mixon and Derrick Henry. I like Charbonnet that much. But also, I got Chuba against Dallas too. Is good. There's so many good plays. So it's hard to pick, but we will see. I'm still awaiting on the Kenneth Walker injury, so I can make changes in my lineup. I'm locked right now because he's still on my IR, but he's questionable. Anyway, that's all I got. Any final thoughts? Fleming, got a minute before we got to close out of here.
Not really. Thanks for doing all the videos, though. It's fun.
Yeah, this has been fun, and we'll see where we're at next week and who might be on this video again. But as always, don't get eliminated. I'll see you guys next week.
See ya.